This is apropos. Well, scores of migrants have died in gruesome yet avoidable workplace-related accidents in Saudi Arabia as the government there ramps up construction work ahead of the 2034 World Cup. That's according to Human Rights Watch, which says those who've died have done so after falling from buildings, having been electrocuted, or in some cases even decapitated. Selena Sykes has more.
After FIFA President Gianni Infantino paid a visit to Saudi Arabia, the host of the 2034 World Cup, an accusation that football's world governing body is failing to learn lessons from the past. A report published by Human Rights Watch has warned of a surge of deaths of migrant construction workers in the Gulf country as it prepares to host one of the world's biggest sports competitions. Workers have fallen from heights, been electrocuted and even crushed or decapitated by heavy machinery, according to the NGO. Heat-related illnesses are also a major concern. The report says many deaths are wrongly classified as having occurred due to natural causes, and that the families of workers are not compensated. In interviews with the families of 31 workers from Bangladesh, India and Nepal, many recount the struggle they face to repatriate the bodies of their loved ones.
Initially, the people from the company proposed to bury my husband's body in Saudi Arabia and assured us of various company facilities in return. But when we wanted to bring my husband's body to Bangladesh and bury him here, the company said that we will have to bear all the expenses of bringing the body.
Human Rights Watch is calling on Saudi authorities to ensure basic safety protections for the country's huge migrant workforce, which is now rushing to build 11 new stadiums, a rail and transit network, and 185,000 hotel rooms in time for 2034. Saudi authorities are yet to comment. The oil-rich Gulf nation was handed the right to host the World Cup in December.
Saudi Arabia.
Despite concerns for its human rights record, conditions for migrant labourers and criminalisation of same-sex relationships. The same concerns were raised ahead of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. While difficult to estimate, it's believed that more than 6,500 migrant workers died in the build-up to the tournament, though Doha said it recorded only 37 migrant worker deaths during that period.
For more, we're joined now in studio by Ahmed Benchemsi. He's Advocacy Director for the Middle East and North Africa at Human Rights Watch. Thanks so much for coming into us this evening. We do appreciate you coming into studio. Firstly, before we talk about what can be done about all of this, tell us a little bit more about what your investigation uncovered and the reaction, perhaps, if there has been any, from Saudi authorities.
Well, I mean, it's been more than a decade that we have been documenting the various forms of abuse that migrant workers are subjected to in Saudi Arabia, coming mostly from Southern Asia, talking like countries like Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, India. This report specifically focuses on the deaths of migrant workers because we have documented, several deaths in the workplace that were classified as natural, even though obviously they were not. I mean, we have testimonies of workers who have been electrocuted, who fell from heights in construction sites, who also were decapitated by heavy machinery. I mean, these are really gruesome deaths. And there are several testimonies that such deaths, even though they are obviously linked to conditions of work, poor conditions at that, are classified as natural. The problem when you classify a death as natural officially, I mean, in the official registries, is that there is no investigation on the circumstances of that death. Also, the families of the deceased cannot claim compensation. And they, of course, deserve compensation. That is their right, but they don't get it. Even in cases where the deaths have been properly referenced as death on the workplace and compensation is due and recognized as such by the employer, it takes forever to get it. The processes are very long, very complicated. We had testimonies of families who had to fight as long as 10 years, up to 15 years in one case, to get what they rightfully deserve after the death of their loved ones. This is a very, very serious situation.
And they're dealing with that on top of course, going through the tragedy of losing somebody, a loved one, who's been working in a foreign country. Tell us some more as well about the actual law. Like, what are Saudi authorities obliged to actually do under current legislation?
Well, Saudi authorities, the Saudi laws oblige every company that employs more than 50 people to take a whole set of measures to ensure protection of workers on their work sites, to ensure social security and things like that. But when we look on the ground, also to protect them against extreme heat, because that is a recurrent problem not only in Saudi but also in other Gulf countries. But when we look on the ground, when we investigate, we see that the measures that are effectively taken are grossly inadequate. They are not nearly enough because deaths continues. And this is going even further now because the World Cup 2034 is coming up, which means more construction sites, which means more projects. I mean, there's plenty of mega projects in Saudi Arabia that employ scores, and we're talking thousands of hundreds of migrant workers. But it's going to be even more and more in the lead up to the World Cup. In the case that no serious measures are taken to prevent such gruesome death and to also ensure and guarantee that families will get retribution, we will only continue witnessing more and more tragedies. This is the alarm bell that we're ringing in this report that we published today.
And there were similar tragedies. We heard many of the same kind of stories back when Qatar was given the World Cup back in 2022. It was accused of exploiting workers, abusing people there. What was actually done about that, Ahmed? Have any of those lessons been learned?
We wish those lessons have been learned, because we have also rung the alarm bell before, during and after the Qatar World Cup, saying that there were various forms of abuse that migrant workers were subjected to, and we were talking to the same party, which is FIFA. You know, it's FIFA that granted the World Cup to Qatar. It's FIFA that equally grants the World Cup to Saudi Arabia. Well, we sent a letter to FIFA asking FIFA to not only draw lessons from what happened in Qatar, but to realize that this might be even worse because the numbers are bigger. Well, FIFA answered us. And like the Saudi authorities who did not answer us, but FIFA did answer us. They sent us a letter promising that they will work on a general policy to ensure, more guarantees and more care in general for the workers. The problem is, this looked like lip service because it was very vague. There was nothing concrete and specific and precise in it. Will they, for example, push Saudi authorities to enforce mandatory life insurance policies for workers? These are the type of specific measures that we're pushing to. I mean, it's easy to just give lip service and say that you care about people, but the devil is in the details, as you know, as the proverb goes. We should really focus on the details and on specific and effective policies.
And what kind of due diligence is FIFA actually obliged to carry out ahead of awarding these tournaments to countries such as Qatar and Saudi Arabia?
It is supposed to guarantee that human rights are enforced, and not just in terms of migrant workers and safety measures and all what concerns migrant workers. It's also the laws of Saudi Arabia and the general context of Saudi Arabia. I mean there are human rights policies among FIFA's policies, but I mean we've seen that they haven't been enforced the way they should have been in Qatar, and it looks like they're going the same path again in Saudi Arabia. I mean it's 2034, so it's 9 years ahead of now. We're already ringing the alarm, and we'll keep going. And it's not just us. It's a whole environment of international NGOs that are doing the same work. By the way, this report that we have published today has been published concomitantly with another report by another very brave organization called Fair Square that also documented the plight of migrant workers in Saudi Arabia and got to the same conclusions as us, that there are scores of death of migrant workers on the workplace that go uninvestigated, and in the end, there's no justice that is rendered.
And apart from ringing the alarm bell, as you say you have been doing and you will continue to do for the next 9 years, what can actually be done to protect these migrant workers?
I mean, effective policies, what can be done? Saudi Arabia has to take measures. There could be lawsuits as well. I mean, there is a lawsuit between the International Labour Organization and I think Saudi Arabia, that's right, that is still ongoing on another form of abuse of workers. So there are some rules that can be taken in terms of international processes. As far as we are concerned, our job is to document violations, to expose them, and to advocate with international organizations, namely and chiefly here FIFA, to keep applying pressure on Saudi Arabia, because there is a risk of image association that is very bad for FIFA.
And is there any pressure actually being applied on Saudi Arabia? We see this week the world's most powerful man visiting Saudi Arabia, also Qatar today, Donald Trump there making business deals in these countries. What kind of pressure needs to be applied?
I mean, continuous pressure needs to be applied. I wish we had a magic wand and we could, by mere dint of pressure coming from human rights organizations, just, fix the problems of the world. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. But we need to keep the pressure going. We need to, this is what we call watchdogs, because we watch consistently the evils of the world as they are unfolding, and we are, shedding lights on whatever is going wrong and saying, hey, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. They are international media. Thank you for inviting me here tonight, because you are contributing to this pressure, and the fight goes on.
And what is actually luring these migrant workers to countries such as Saudi Arabia and Qatar in the first place? And what can be done perhaps to better educate people about what might await them if they do go to work on these kind of projects?
Well, what lures them, it's the same thing that lures any migrant worker in the world. It's the promise of a decent salary. It's the promise to send money back home, to send children to school, to care for their loved ones. So it's basic human dignity. That's why immigration exists all throughout the world, and the migrants to the Gulf are no exception. However, the conditions in the Gulf are different from the conditions in many other regions of the world, and we have documented countless types of abuses. One of them is that many workers in their countries of origin sign a contract or sign a letter of engagement, I'm not sure how it's called, specifying that they will get this type of job and this salary once they set foot in Saudi Arabia or in Qatar. And once they get there, they find out that it's a completely different job, that it's a salary that is way less than that, but there are very little ways to remedy that. So this is one of the abuses that we have documented in the past. Salary theft, there are many of them. I mean, if your viewers are interested, you just have to go into HRW.org, and there are many reports that document the various forms of abuses. So we have been also advocating with the countries of origin to educate their populations to know what's happening. It's a long-term process.
Thank you so much for coming in to us and explaining it to us, Ahmed. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there for now. That's Ahmed Benchemsi, Advocacy Director for the Middle East and North Africa at Human Rights Watch. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.